this is not actually a fight, it's an exhibition. We're gonna do it again, and hopefully we're gonna entertain the people.
Floyd Mayweather retired in 2017 with a perfect 50-0 record and over $1 billion in career earnings. Now, at 49, he is fighting again, and everything happening around that decision makes it one of the most painful stories in the history of sport. That is the tragedy of Floyd Mayweather. The comeback at 49. September 2017, Floyd Mayweather Jr. walks out of the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas with a 10th round stoppage of Conor McGregor on his record, a reported $275 million in his pocket, and a perfect 50-0. No losses, no close calls that the scorecards couldn't protect him from, no real reason to ever come back. And for 9 years, he didn't. Not professionally. He boxed Logan Paul in 2021. He boxed John Gotti III in 2023. He traveled the world doing exhibitions in Japan, Dubai, Australia. Controlled environments, no official stakes, no risk to the record that had defined him. For 9 years, the legend was safe. Then, in February 2026, Floyd Mayweather Jr. announced he was coming out of retirement and returning to professional boxing. He was 48 years old at the time, turning 49 on February 24th. The announcement came as a written statement to ESPN, and it carried the signature confidence the world had always associated with Money Mayweather. I still have what it takes to set more records in the sport of boxing, from my upcoming Mike Tyson event to my next professional fight afterward. No one will generate a bigger gate, have a larger global broadcast audience, and generate more money with each event than my events. The language was the same, the bravado was the same, but the context was different, because attached to that announcement was a schedule, and that schedule and everything surrounding it is where the story starts to split. The first event, an exhibition against Mike Tyson, who is 59 years old, scheduled for April 25th in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But even before anyone had laced up, this fight was already facing serious doubts about whether it would happen at all, with Tyson himself speaking publicly amid the surrounding confusion. The second event, a summer exhibition in Athens, Greece, against Mike Zambidis, a Greek kickboxing legend who had retired from the sport in 2015 before being pulled back into the spotlight for the occasion. And the third event, the one that got everybody's attention, September 19th, 2026, Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao at the Sphere in Las Vegas, streaming for free on Netflix. 11 years after their first fight, the one that generated hundreds of millions in revenue and broke every pay-per-view record on the books. This time, billed as a sanctioned professional boxing rematch, a real fight with judges, and a result that goes onto the permanent record. The weight of that is worth sitting with for a moment. Floyd Mayweather, at 49, in a professional fight, not an exhibition, is agreeing to a situation where 50-0 can become 50-1. The number that has been the entire foundation of his public identity for 9 years is suddenly in play.
And, I got an exhibition with Mike Tyson also, another exhibition in Greece.
In interviews, Floyd framed all of this as leisure, a man who trains every day anyway, choosing to turn that training into entertainment.
So if I'm just sitting at home and I'm just working out every day, spending time with my grandson and spending time with my children, I said, why not go out, have a little fun, entertain, and put on some exhibition?
On the surface, it reads like a man at peace with himself, a legend who simply refuses to sit still. But fun and exhibitions do not explain a professional fight contract with Manny Pacquiao. They do not explain the financial picture that was already in the public domain by the time this comeback was announced. And they do not explain the lawsuit that Floyd himself filed just days before he told the world he was coming back. The story underneath the comeback is the story worth telling, and it starts with the single statement made in a casual Vegas interview that threw the entire Pacquiao rematch into complete chaos. The Pacquiao deal. There's a particular kind of chaos that descends when a man says one thing to a camera, and his business partners say something completely different in writing, backed by contracts. That is precisely what unfolded with Floyd Mayweather and the Manny Pacquiao rematch in the weeks surrounding his comeback announcement, and the fallout from it is still reverberating. When the fight was first unveiled to the world, it was announced as a sanctioned professional bout, the first professional boxing match ever staged at the Sphere in Las Vegas, streaming globally and for free on Netflix. That framing mattered enormously. The Sphere is not an ordinary boxing venue. It is a 9-figure architectural statement on the Las Vegas Strip, a destination that communicates spectacle and permanence in equal measure. Pairing it with Netflix's reach, a platform with hundreds of millions of subscribers worldwide, was the kind of distribution strategy that the original 2015 fight, locked behind a $100 pay-per-view wall, never had access. 2. On paper, the rematch was positioned to dwarf everything that came before it. Pacquiao's camp was aligned with that vision. According to MP Promotions CEO Jas Mathur, there was no ambiguity about what had been agreed to. 3 separate signed contracts, all paid, all describing a sanctioned professional bout. 3 documents, all pointing in the same direction. Then, Floyd sat down for an interview with Vegas Sports Today and dismantled the narrative in 8 seconds.
This is not actually a fight, it's an exhibition. We're going to do it again, and hopefully we're going to entertain the people.
Not a fight, an exhibition. Venue, TBD. That single declaration, delivered with the casual confidence of a man who believes his word overrides paperwork, sent the entire rematch into a spiral of contradictions, accusations, and legal jeopardy. Netflix had announced a professional fight. Pacquiao's team had signed contracts for a professional fight. Floyd was now describing something else entirely in public, and the gap between those two realities could only be resolved one way, in court or with one party capitulating. The Pacquiao camp chose neither. Jas Mathur's position was immovable, reclassifying the bout as an exhibition after contracts for a professional sanctioned fight had already been signed and paid would constitute a breach of those agreements. 3 contracts, legally binding. No renegotiation was on the table. Pacquiao himself made clear that the stakes were not abstract. For Manny Pacquiao, the 2015 fight remains a wound that has never fully closed, a majority decision loss he has disputed since the night it happened. He had spent years away from the sport, returned to competition in 2025, and fought to a title-level draw, and saw the rematch as the moment to rewrite the record permanently. His camp's message could not have been more pointed. I want Floyd to be forever haunted by the one loss on his professional record and always remember who gave it to him. That is the voice of a man who has no interest in a scripted spectacle. That is a man who wants a result. What gives the entire situation an even sharper edge is what the reports revealed about money already exchanged. By the time Floyd was publicly calling the fight an exhibition, he had allegedly already taken a cash advance on his fight purse, collected money from a deal he appeared to be publicly unwinding. The pattern, receive payment first, reframe terms later, was not lost on anyone watching, and the reaction online was a torrent of accusations ranging from contract breach to outright fraud. What the Pacquiao drama reveals, underneath all the contractual chaos, is a man maneuvering desperately around consequences, trying to extract the financial benefit of a professional fight while eliminating the legacy risk of one. The question that demands an answer is why? Why would Floyd Mayweather, 50-0, financially untouchable in every story he ever told about himself, be trying to reshape the terms of a deal he already signed and already got paid for? To understand that, you have to go back to December 2025 and a Business Insider investigation that changed the way the world reads the name Floyd Mayweather, the billion-dollar earner and the debt-filled life. There is a particular breed of financial tragedy that is uniquely modern, uniquely American, and uniquely devastating. The story of a man who earned more money than most countries will ever see in a single year and still found himself drowning in the wake of it. Floyd Mayweather's version of that story is one of the most meticulously documented and one of the most grimly instructive examples in the entire history of professional sport. Over the course of his professional boxing career, Floyd Mayweather earned over $1.2 billion in fight purses. The 2015 Pacquiao fight alone is reported to have brought in over $250 million. The McGregor fight in 2017 added over $275 million more. He was, by any objective measure, the highest-earning athlete on the planet for the better part of a decade. And the lifestyle he built to match those earnings was not understated. Bugattis and Rolls-Royces parked in front of mansions. Richard Mille watches worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each, worn casually on training videos. A private jet called Air Mayweather. A Las Vegas strip club named Girl Collection. Mansions in Beverly Hills, Miami, and Las Vegas. Cash stacks photographed and posted to Instagram like wallpaper, not just as wealth, but as a declaration, as an identity, as living proof that a boy from Grand Rapids, Michigan, who grew up poor had escaped every version of his original life. Then, December 2025 arrived, and Business Insider published an investigation into what Floyd Mayweather's post-boxing financial life actually looked like beneath the surface. What it revealed was not a portrait of a man comfortably insulated by generational wealth. It was something far more turbulent, and the details were drawn entirely from public records, court filings, and property databases, which made them impossible to wave away. In 2024, Mayweather took out a $54 million high-risk loan at approximately 9% interest from lender Don Hankey, a structure cross-collateralized against 14 homes, the Las Vegas strip club, and the private jet simultaneously. The breadth of assets tied to a single loan that size is the signature of a man navigating a cash flow problem, not building a portfolio. The real estate picture was equally troubled. 2 commercial property foreclosures in the span of 18 months, an LA warehouse purchased in 2022 that went into default by 2024, and a Las Vegas property sold at auction back to its original owner. The Las Vegas strip club building was at risk over more than $52,000 in unpaid property taxes and penalties. The Gulfstream private jet, Air Mayweather itself, was sold in December 2025. Beverly Hills and Miami mansions were sold to partners. Assets that had once been the showpieces of a global brand were quietly changing hands. The smaller debts carried their own cumulative weight. A $137,000 lawsuit over unpaid jet fuel, resolved by a default judgment against Mayweather. A $568 trash collection lien on his Las Vegas mansion. A $330,000 lawsuit from a Manhattan luxury building over unpaid rent. A dispute over a $1.2 million Mercedes-Maybach G-Wagon that ended in a counter lawsuit for fraud. Jewelry bills stretching into the millions, including one bill for $3.9 million in Patek Philippe and Richard Mille watches that was eventually settled out of court. A judgment exceeding $3 million owed to a Nigerian media company for unpaid appearance fees. A bill that had swelled from its original amount through the legal process. And through all of this, the IRS, over $28 million in back taxes settled over the years, including $22.2 million in 2017 and another $6.6 million in 2023. His attorney Bobby Samini pushed back with force, insisting Mayweather was not experiencing financial strain, but borrowing against equity in the precise manner that sophisticated business people do. Mayweather himself has consistently denied any suggestion of real financial distress, but Celebrity Net Worth revised their estimate of his net worth down to approximately $100 million, a number still significant in absolute terms, but a staggering distance from a man who earned over $1 billion.
Well, I bought myself on my contract for $750,000. And in just 3 fights, I made $750 million.
The foundation of what Floyd built is real. The earnings are real. The trajectory from poverty to $1 billion is one of the most remarkable financial stories in the history of sport, and nothing that follows diminishes what he created. But what the Business Insider investigation forced the world to ask is a simple and devastating question. Where did all of it go? And is the comeback at 49, the professional fights, the Pacquiao deal, the advance on his purse, happening because Floyd Mayweather wants to fight or because Floyd Mayweather needs to? That question takes on an entirely different dimension when you discover that weeks before his comeback announcement, Floyd filed a lawsuit claiming he may not have lost all of this money on his own. Because what that lawsuit alleges is not mismanagement, it is betrayal. The $340 million lawsuit. On February 4th, 2026, 2 days before Floyd Mayweather announced his return to professional boxing, and just weeks after Business Insider had stripped the mythology from his financial life, Floyd Mayweather Jr. filed a lawsuit against Showtime Networks and Showtime's former president, Steven Espinoza, seeking at least $340 million in damages. The sequence of those 3 events, the investigation, the lawsuit, the comeback, didn't go unnoticed. Each one arrived on the heels of the last with the compressed, relentless momentum of a story that had been building underground for years before finally erupting into public view. A man whose finances had been publicly examined and found dramatically wanting, who then filed the largest lawsuit of his career and then within days declared he was returning to the ring at 49. Whether those events are connected by desperation, strategy, or coincidence is a question that only Floyd can answer, but the timing makes the question unavoidable. The lawsuit itself reaches into the deepest architecture of Mayweather's professional career. The complaint describes what it calls a complex web of hidden accounts, unauthorized transactions, and deliberate concealment. At the center of the alleged scheme sits Al Haymon, Floyd's longtime advisor and one of the most influential figures in professional boxing for the past 2 decades, who is not named as a defendant in the suit itself, but who the complaint alleges was the architect of the misdirection. According to the filing, Haymon diverted funds owed to Mayweather from 8 Showtime pay-per-view events and not minor ones. The fights named include the Victor Guerrero fight, the Canelo Alvarez fight, both Marcos Maidana fights, the Pacquiao fight, the Andre Berto fight, and the Conor McGregor fight. In other words, the architecture of Floyd Mayweather's entire commercial legacy, the fights that made him a billionaire. And the suit alleges Showtime was not a passive bystander, that it actively aided Heyman by routing money into accounts he controlled, making the broadcaster itself a co-conspirator in the alleged fraud. Steven Espinoza responded with a denial that was personal and pointed. His position, delivered publicly, was that he was proud of my reputation and that every fighter who worked with Showtime received every penny they deserved. Showtime called the claims without merit. The lawsuit remains unresolved, a $340 million question mark hanging over one of the most complicated financial stories in boxing history. But remove the legal language for a moment and sit with what the lawsuit is actually saying about Floyd Mayweather's life. If the allegations are true, if the proceeds from 8 of his biggest fights were systematically rerouted away from where they were supposed to land, then the financial picture Business Insider revealed takes on an entirely different meaning. The debts, the foreclosures, the liens on a trash bill and a strip club, the $54 million loan cross-collateralized against 14 homes, none of it necessarily tells the story of a man who spent recklessly without regard for the consequences. Some of it, possibly, tells the story of a man who was being drained from the inside by people he trusted across the course of a decade. That reframing is not an exoneration. Lifestyles that involve 3.9 million jewelry bills and a private jet named after yourself leave limited room for victimhood. But it does complicate the simplicity of the narrative, the idea that Floyd Mayweather simply blew $1 billion through excess. Because if $340 million of what he earned never actually made it to him in the first place, then the gap between what he earned and what he has today becomes considerably easier to explain. What it does not explain, and what no lawsuit ever could, is the decision to step back into a boxing ring at 49. Because the deepest layer of this story has nothing to do with money or betrayal or contracts. It has to do with something Floyd has talked about since at least 2015, something he has watched destroy the people he loved most, and something he now risks accelerating with every round he fights. To understand the full weight of what Floyd Mayweather is risking when he puts the gloves back on, we have to look at what boxing has already done to his family. The memory problem. The most revealing interviews Floyd Mayweather has ever given are not the ones about money. They are the ones about memory. And in those interviews, in podcasts, in sit-down conversations, in moments where the showman's armor briefly cracked, Floyd has described watching boxing take something from the people he loved that no amount of wealth could ever recover. And now, with full knowledge of what he saw, he is walking back toward it. The story of what boxing cost Floyd Mayweather's family begins with his uncle. Roger Mayweather was not simply Floyd's uncle. He was the technical cornerstone of Floyd's entire career, the trainer who turned an already gifted young man into the most elusive defensive fighter the sport had ever seen. He was a former world champion in his own right, a man who understood boxing from the inside in the way that only someone who had absorbed its punishment fully can. He was, by every account Floyd has given, one of the most important people in his life. And then, gradually, boxing returned the favor.
My Uncle Roger Mayweather has lost a lot of memory from the sport of boxing.
It did not happen all at once. Decline rarely does. It arrives in increments, a word lost here, a face unrecognized there, until the increments have consumed enough of a person that what remains is only a shadow of who they were.
And it's sad that he's only in his 50s, but it seems like he's a old man that's in his 80s.
A man in his 50s, hollowed out to the appearance of someone 3 decades older. Floyd hired full-time caregivers. He spoke about Roger in interviews with a reverence that stripped away every layer of bravado. As a champion, as a trainer, as someone irreplaceable. And then came the moment that sits at the heart of every conversation about what Floyd Mayweather has truly paid for his career.
He don't even know who I am anymore. My Uncle Roger don't even know who I am no more.
The man who built Floyd Mayweather the boxer, who shaped his stance, his reflexes, his ring intelligence across decades, spent his final years without the ability to recognize the fighter he created. Roger Mayweather died in March 2020 at 58 years old. Floyd's tribute tribute described him as a great champion and one of the best trainers the sport had ever seen, and as a man whose health had been failing for several years. The implication of what caused that failure, for a man who spent a career taking punishment in the sport's brutal interior, was never spoken aloud directly. It didn't need to be, but Roger was not the only one.
My grandmother died from it. My Uncle Roger died from it. My daddy's going through it, so.
3 generations of his family. A pattern so visible, so consistent across the people he loved most, that Floyd has admitted in interviews he wonders whether it will one day reach him, whether the occasional memory lapses he notices are the early signature of what boxing gave Roger, or the genetic inheritance of what took his grandmother, or both. It is the kind of fear that does not announce itself cleanly. It sits in the back of the mind and grows louder in the quiet moments. And yet Floyd, in those same interviews, found a way to sit with that fear without letting it stop him.
Can I have a little memory loss? It's possible. But guess what? One thing I did do, I built generational wealth for my children and my family.
That is the sentence where the full weight of the tragedy lands. Floyd Mayweather, the most technically gifted boxer of his generation, a man who earned over $1 billion through a career built on the discipline of protecting himself, rationalizing the risk of losing his own memory by pointing to what he built for the people who will outlive him. It is not a statement of comfort, it is a statement of resignation. A man who looked at what boxing took from his uncle and his grandmother, assessed the same risk for himself, and decided that the wealth he secured for his children was the acceptable price to pay for the possibility of the same outcome. His father is still alive. Floyd Sr., boxing trainer, former champion, Floyd's father, is now living with dementia. Floyd has posted about him publicly with tenderness. Even though my dad is dealing with dementia, he is still a great man. And videos from the family have circulated online showing the quiet, priceless moments that dementia makes both more precious and more heartbreaking. And within that story, there's a detail that refuses to resolve neatly.
My grandpa's Floyd Mayweather Sr. He unfortunately has dementia. But one of the times that he's very interactive and he's still himself is when he's in a boxing ring.
The boxing ring, the same environment implicated in the decline of Roger Mayweather, in the pattern that took Floyd's grandmother, in the hereditary shadow that Floyd himself has admitted he fears, is the place where Floyd Sr. still becomes himself. The sport that took his memory gives him back moments of it. It is simultaneously a comfort and the starkest possible warning of what the sport costs over a lifetime inside it. At 49, with a financial picture that has been publicly dissected and found to be built on shaky ground, with a $340 million lawsuit pending against people who were supposed to be his closest professional allies, with a Pacquiao rematch now mired in contract disputes and public contradictions, and with the full knowledge of what boxing did to Roger and what it is actively doing to his father, Floyd Mayweather is putting the gloves back on. He says it is for fun, for records, for legacy, for the love of entertainment. The tragedy of Floyd Mayweather at 49 is not that he is fighting. It is that by this point, we cannot be entirely certain that he has a real choice. The money, the alleged betrayal, the family curse that has already claimed his grandmother and his uncle, the fear he has articulated out loud, and then, each time, decided not to obey. All of it converges on a man who was once completely untouchable, who kept the record perfect and the myth intact for 9 years, now stepping back into the only arena where he ever had total control, in a life where that control is slipping away from every other direction. That is what makes it heartbreaking. Not the fights, not the contracts, not even the memory. It is the fact that the man who spent his entire career escaping from poverty, from defeat, from every opponent who ever tried to touch him, may now be fighting for reasons that have nothing to do with boxing at all. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen.